Hello everybody and welcome to All Play and No Work, the Quantified Us, a panel that takes place within the play stream of this year's conference program. As we planned the Capture All conference program within these three streams, we always thought about them as very much interconnected, and I think above all this panel will show these interconnecting sections of the theme. I am not going to say much more, anything actually about the contents of the panel. I want to introduce to you Daphne Dragona sitting here, who will be the curator, who is the curator, co-curator of the conference program, and who will be the moderator of the session. Daphne is a curator who is also a researcher, and she's based here in Berlin and in Athens. And she is working often on kind of intersection between digital culture and more social issues, between art and research. She's been working with different institutions such as Laboral in Spain, the Goethe Institute, the National Museum of Contemporary Arts in Athens. She deals with topics such as urban development, gamification, and the commons. One topic that she's been dealing with a lot is actually this problematic of gamification, how it relates to labor, how it relates to the value of play in today's economy. So please welcome Daphne Dragona and of course the participants that she will introduce to you. Yes, welcome.
Good afternoon, welcome. So what about if, according to what we discuss in this conference, your day life is really like this? You wake up having your sleep monitored. You get up and you have your breakfast logged. You walk to work and you track your steps. You always have your wristband on, and you know that it is the informant of your activity, not only to yourself, but also to your boss, and possibly to your health insurance. During your day, you might need to use some gamification platform for your further training, and hopefully you might be rewarded for it. When you don't feel so well, you log into Mood Hacker and rate your mood. If it is your work that makes you unhappy, then another application, Entelo, which studies your social media score, will possibly inform your company or other companies about your will to change job. And so it goes. The day can continue with such a pace. And the question is, what for? The constant identification and quantification of everything is supposedly all about our wellness, meaning not only your mental and physical wellness, but also the company's wellness, the corporate wellness. It is about how we should all team up to live better, as Jambon, the company of activity tracker, states. It is about driving efficiency, productivity, and cheerfulness among employees, teams, and offices. This scenario is being brought to us thanks to two factors involved. Firstly, fun, which lies behind gamification, and secondly, self-care, self-mastery, and self-improvement that lies behind the logic of the quantified self-movement. But there is, of course, an obvious paradox within this logic. Mollick and Rothbard from the University of Pennsylvania call work at play as the paradox of mandatory fun, or more precisely, well-intentioned but managerially imposed fun, which is based on the concept of consent. And here they develop further the thought of an older scholar, Baraway, who already in 1979 studied how games facilitate control in management. In other words, can you avoid playing the game? Or have we already reached the point that, as Kate Crawford recently said, you might lose your job because you did not log enough steps? Because it feels like we need to understand the rules of the games we're confronted with, compete, and at the end that they serve the interests of business. Playful quantified work is probably one of the latest expressions of life put to work. And if it sounds as something you wouldn't engage in any case, then the following example is somehow much more familiar. Think of your online interactivity and all the imperatives you face already for some years now, of how you're invited to like, to share, to comment, to tag, to add location, update status, to be identifiable, to be you, to be influential, be known for what you love, study your stats, show up in more searches, in general, take action, in other words, anytime and anywhere. These are calls for action, for competition, for endless productivity. It actually is a form of productive play which perfectly complements playful work. We surrender our temporal identities in order to become stylized, quantified, and distributed, as Brooke Vent writes in her recent Allure of the Selfie book. We are assisting in the shaping of what Richard Rogers called as post-demographics, that is no more the traditional demographics of race, ethnicity, age, income, and educational level, but rather the demographics of tastes, interests, favorites, groups, accepted invitations, installed apps through our online profiles. And here we should also remember what Carolyn Gerlitz and Anne Helmont write about the performative and productive capacities of the social buttons, how they metrify and intensify users' effects, producing value for the networks, or how there is a constant desire for more, as Benjamin Grosser calls it. But at least there is nothing mandatory on this side of productive playfulness and sociability. Or maybe is there? Because truth is that for a long time now, we see our online profiles as Tamagotchi toys that need to be fed in order to remain alive. We voluntarily brand ourselves and engage in practices of self-commodification. We constantly feed our profiles with data that facilitate the formations of our own user-generated data bodies. And we act as there is no other option. Bifo has already expressed this nicely 6 years ago. He wrote, "If you want to survive, you have to be competitive. And if you want to be competitive, you must be connected, receive, and process continuously an immense and growing amount of data. This provokes a constant attentive stress, a reduction of the time available for affectivity. We are therefore commanded to communicate. The communicable is excluded." As a recent nice article, "We are all very anxious" in Plan C was writing. So we need to be online, we need to be competitive, and worst of all, it is never clear who is watching and what all this is for. To the framework of playful work, we comply because we're exposed to the gaze of employers and insurance companies. In social media platforms, we adjust and normalize our behaviors according to the expectations of those that might be watching, from friends and followers to network companies and security agencies. In one case or another, we are pressured, anxious, and all we get to respond to this anxiety is an illusion of self-management and control. And this is offered through play, or to be more accurate, through game elements and playful technologies, through gamification platforms, activity trackers, and platforms that count performativity and can offer fun and possibilities for self-mastery and self-optimization. It is indeed a very difficult time for the ancient culture of play, as Mackenzie Work put it, as the efficiency and functionality of play takes over. So are we allowed to escape gameful work and productive playful leisure time? Can we realize how play today works? Can we oppose the current transformations of play, which are attached to the datification and quantification of everything? And if so, how? Can we put any limits? Can we decide what we want to be automated and controlled, as Judy Watzman pointed out yesterday? We are facing, I think, what I like to call as a period of what we would call as Datenspielen in German. The ambiguity of the word as game and play at the same time interestingly reflects the condition we're in and the need for change. So it's on one hand about the game of data, of our data, but also about the data play, the potentiality of playing with data. So while the game of data refers to an infinite and unsymmetrical game, algorithmically controlled, data play comes to express the potentiality of resistance against the rules of numbers and the power of the algorithm. The question is how this shift can happen. How can we become possibly the data punks, meta punks, or infra punks, as Work once wrote, the ones that can discover the internal tensions, ambiguities, and possibilities of the current game space and redesign it in order to formulate at the same time new alliances, new bonds of affect, and bring new kinds of quantitative measure. Can we imagine new structures that purposefully embrace this measure? And here I use a term that Paolo Virno has used in the past to refer to the disproportion of art. And where would such structures come from? Our panel today will aim to address such issues, that is on one hand looking into the elements that render play and games functional and efficient, serving other purposes, and on the other, it will aim to potentially look how we can provoke change. It will particularly look into the instrumentalization of play and pleasure, and it will situate the current phenomena, like the gamification and the quantified self, in the particular period that they are developed. We will discuss the pretexts and principles that lie behind. Different theoretical contextualizations and methodologies of approaching today's role will be presenting, placing always the user, the player, the self, in the center of the discussion, and examining how one is affected by the imposition of game elements. For instance, we will look into Foucault's care of the self and respectively the technologies of the self, but we will also hear about the principles of truth and transparency that Gary Haus discusses. Ultimately, our question can be, can we really oppose the standardization and normalization of life once we realize the role that playful mechanisms and game-like media play? I'm very happy to be here today with three great academic scholars that work on game studies. I will introduce each one of them before their talk. So we will start with Jennifer Whitson, who is a sociology from Canada, who researches the secret life of software, the people behind it, and the ways it affects our daily lives. She's an assistant professor in the Department of Sociology and Legal Studies at the University of Waterloo, where she teaches surveillance studies, critical game studies, and video game development. Her current research interests include the studio studies, social influences on game development processes, gamification, online governance, and surveillance. Her work has been published in various academic publications and editions. Currently, she's working on how big data and analytics are used in the game industry. The title of her talk, In the Limits of Play. Thank you very much.